Welcome to Out of the Box with Christine, the podcast for conscious folk. I am your host, Christine Blasdale. This program is intended to bring you a fresh perspective on this thing we call life. And in each and every episode, we're going to dive into the topics that matter most, with lively conversations on issues such as business, health, wealth, love, and transformational healing, all with the goal of creating a better world and becoming a happier human being. I will be your tour guide on this epic adventure, and as we embark on this journey, our ultimate goal is going to be one of transformation to our highest potential. And now, let's get out of the box. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Out of the Box with Christine. I am your host, Christine Blasdale, and I am so excited about today's show. I feel like it's Christmas. Like it's Christmas morning, and I've come out in my little jammies with my sleepy eyes, and I'm waking and there's a present under the tree. And the tree has this beautiful present wrapped up in Mrs. Kasha Davis, who is my special guest today. Drag queen, motivational speaker, extraordinaire. And my new BFF, I think, is Mrs. Kasha Davis, aka Ed Popel. We were laughing about that because you're such not an Ed or Eddie, no, but it's Ed Popel is your I guess your birth name, your real name, who is the Workhorse Queen. Not only does she travel the world helping entrepreneurs claim their passion, but also she's a motivational speaker and teaches how you can love what you do and that beautiful thing of self-love and forgiveness. And I couldn't think of a better human being to have on the show. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Kasha Davis, for coming with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that lovely introduction. You know, when you talk about the Christmas tree, it's my favorite ever because when I was a little boy, girl, gal, girl, boy, fella, I used to sit and we had the Christmas tree, but we also had the platform back then with the trains, and there was a tunnel. And I used to think, I want to live in that neighborhood. Well, lo and behold, I live in a neighborhood that has a train and a tunnel, you know? And so when you talk about that Christmas, it brought me right to that moment and just kind of like imagining and believing that something like that could be possible. So thanks for that intro.
Well, and you're just the absolute perfect guest because, Out of the Box with Christine, it's all about consciously walking our way through life, and especially for people who are in business. But I mean, you chose a field that is, well, it's quite interesting, number one, but number two, and you even mentioned this a little bit in your bio, it's very youth focused, and you have been doing this for a very long time. Can you just give us a little bit of a background? When did you decide to just kind of say, okay, Ed, I'm coming into my own, and I am going to be the fabulous Mrs. Kasha Davis? When did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you, it happened as life does sometimes, organically, and things just kept, coming together. I grew up in a small town in Scranton, Pennsylvania, outside of Scranton, called Taylor. And, it was back in the 70s and 80s. And back then, Liberace and Barry Manilow, they were all straight. And so I had to be too. I had to live in the closet, and I could not be myself. And I was always positioned as I had to be somebody different. And so this feminine side of who I am was suppressed for so many years. And I gravitated to the theater. And I remember that was a place where I could flourish, where I could be silly and I could be myself essentially, but I was actually portraying somebody else. I was free to flail my arms. I was free to, drag my S's and be me. Well, fast forward, I get married to the first woman who says yes. And I eventually, move to a city, to Rochester, New York, to open a call center. And I stumble upon, as life progresses, drag. And I'm like, what? Okay, that's fun. It's fine. It's fun. Whatever. But I ended up getting inspired. Mr. Davis, my husband, and I went to P-Town, Provincetown, and we saw Miss Richfield 1981. And if you don't know her, look her up. She's my She inspired me to do drag. And she was telling this, she had a theatrical character. She was telling her story through humor. And by the end, she had a message. And it was more than just lip syncing a song. Yeah. And I thought, that's what I want to be. And I did it for fun. I knew since I was a child I was meant to be on stage. And I knew since I was a child I loved everybody. And I was meant to be a positive influencer. What the heck do you do with those things? I didn't know.
You're making me cry. Gosh, I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, and so many young kids that are in also like middle America, but also in different countries where it is not cool. It's not cool to be gay. It's not cool if you're a boy to have feminine qualities. If you're a girl, I'm the same. I was like a boy, girl, burl, goy. Yeah. I don't know. I just was me. I just was me. And when you're really little, it's acceptable, kind of a little bit for girls. It's acceptable to be a little tomboyish. And I know for boys that it's so hard. It's so hard growing up if you don't have that support, right? If you don't have that family support. And I think a great deal of your message is about forgiveness. And if you don't mind, if you can tell the story about when you came out to your family in Little Scranton, Pennsylvania, how that was, because Pennsylvania is also, isn't that the Amish capital?
Well, it's near it. It's a coal mining town. And my father was a U.S. Marshal, retired at the time. And my mother was an Avon district sales manager. So she was a beauty consultant. And, everything about them, the turmoil that was inside the house was kept secret because the shell on the outside had to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And so I had divorced my ex-wife and I moved to Rochester, New York, and came out, and I came home to come out to them. And when I told them, my mother was kind of also dramatic and funny. She's like, no, you don't want to touch somebody's pickle or put your pickle in somebody's dupe. I was like, Mom, what the hell and she was devastated. She's like, how are you going to have children? Gay people don't have children. You're our firstborn. I never want to talk to you again. She's dramatic. And I was like, whatever. But my father said, I know we no longer want to see you. And he spit in my face and told me to get out.
Oh no.
So I did, and I rebuilt a family, and I found that family of friends in the community, but I found more understanding of who I was in that time frame. It was like going to college of me, learning about who I was at that time. And I think they were just scared. And again, back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, there were no examples of happy, healthy homosexuals, right? It was on television. What you saw were hookers, especially if anybody was trans. And then there was, drugs, and silly and flamboyant. They're lighting the loafers. They're all comedians, but no true happy, healthy lives. And so now we're fast forwarding into a time where shows like RuPaul's Drag Race and etc. We're seeing more, we're hearing more with podcasts, and those examples. That's what I'm passionate about. Providing those examples for people to see that it's okay to be exactly who you are.
To be exactly who you are. That is so important. I remember when I came out, I was so terrified. I was so afraid to formally come out to my family. My grandmother, I had the conversation with my grandmother, who I was really worried about because it's my grandmother and she's the oldest of the clan, right? And I was always her little cricket and her favorite. And so I said, Grandma, I'm gay. I like women. And she just looked at me and she's like, well, you're still my cricket, aren't you? And I was like, yes, I am. I love you. And then I went to my dad, who I thought would be really upset because he was conservative Republican. And I was so nervous about him. And a very big guy, overwhelming. And when I came up to him, he was like, Of course you were. I knew that when you were little. You had posters of Farrah Fawcett over your bed. And I thought everybody had posters of Farrah Fawcett over their bed. But he's like,
Yeah.
no, of course you are. It was my mom who had the hardest time because I was her daughter that she thought was going to marry a doctor or a lawyer or, and have the kids. And she thought that because of who I was attracted to and who I loved, it was going to, my life was going to be in danger, right? She thought
Right.
someone was going to hurt me. And she was like, well, how are you going to marry that? And I said, I wouldn't, even if I was straight, I wouldn't want to marry someone just because they're a doctor or a lawyer. I would,
Right.
because I love them. But she's come around now. She's fantastic. She loves my wife. Wife. Oh my gosh.
And
so
that's
much.
the wonderful thing is that, unfortunately, there were no examples back then for me of marriage. And then, because it wasn't legal, and people just didn't even necessarily talk about it because it was seen as unheard of. But then also it is this fear of the future, but really right in the moment that you're in, everything's okay. And your son or daughter is loving who they are and they still want to be a part of your life. And so I think that's what it always comes down to, that fear of like, what's going to happen? What are people going to say? And people don't care. I mean, it's that we think that everybody's going to be like, oh, wow, did you see what happened over at the Popals? No. I mean, they've got their own stuff that they're dealing with in their homes, but that's becomes the process. And then, as you say, as parents, we want their approval, but they want us safe. And they may make some statements and things. And it just, as you said, eventually my parents did come around, and it took me though having to forgive them and let it go, because just because you're a parent doesn't mean you're a perfect person. Doesn't mean you know exactly what to do. So
well, and that forgiveness too, in the ability to have that forgiveness for you makes you free and allows you, so you don't hold on to that hurt and make it a big story. That's the other thing, is the things that happen to us in life, it's how we react, right? So we can either think that something happened, if somebody breaks up with you, it could be the worst thing in the world, and why did they do that? Or it could be, wow, okay, I dodged a bullet. Okay, maybe
right.
this person is not the one for me, and maybe the one that is out there, but I can't get to them if I'm with this creep or this person. Right?
Let me tell you, I told the stories. I stayed in the wreckage. It wasn't until I went through my journey of sobriety that I started to realize that the forgiveness was important. Because what I was doing was I was anesthetizing and not staying present. And instead of driving straight through the shit, I was taking all these detours, a la boxed wine or shots of vodka, and not actually dealing with things. And then, as you're saying, the story was, can you believe what happened to me? I'm the only one who's ever, had to come out to their parents, apparently. But that is how, it was a part of that process of getting to that point. But for me, it was important to put down the alcohol, because when I did, then I was able to face these things and find the forgiveness.
Well, and you're talking about a time too when you came out and were honest and open with your family. You're talking about a time and an area of America too America in general. There's pockets of religion of religion and the dogma that you're going to hell. It's a sin. In some imaginations, I think that if you come out and you say you're gay, or bi or trans, they're imagining like trapeze in your house and wild sex parties and
right.
And what people don't understand is that in any kind of relationship, you go through the same shit. I'm married and we have teenagers.
Yeah.
We go through the same stuff. Like, can you please put the toilet roll back on?
Right. Our daughters. Our daughters are 26 and 28, and we're just glad that they want to say hello to us sometimes. I mean, at this point, And actually, we recently got a king size bed, not because we want the room, because we have a dog
It's the dog.
who sleeps in between us. So now I say, Steve, I think you're in bed. You're all the way over there. So it's like, a nice handshake, and we're like, good night. So I wish there was a trapeze.
I know.
I never did that, and I think because of the fact both myself and my husband, Steve, both were married to women. He had the 2 children, and they are my stepdaughters now. I think that love is love. And we both realized that firsthand. We loved our wives, but we weren't being authentic to ourselves or to them. And it's a horrible thing to do to somebody, is to pretend, that this is what you want, regardless of sexuality. I mean, like, if you don't want to be in the relationship, don't do it to yourself, but don't do it to the other person either. And so, but love is love. And so when I see those cute little things at Target that say love is love, I buy them all, because it's true. It is truly no different. Too many people focus on what happens in the bedroom, and mostly nothing happens in the bedroom. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what are you talking about? What happens in your bedroom, straight people?
Who has time?
Right. So yeah, but it's more about what I felt. Who I fell in love with, the man who brought me a cup of coffee one morning, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm always the one who does something for other people. It was very sweet and kind of you to know what I take in my coffee and to bring it over to me. I started to cry that day, and I knew that I was falling in love that moment, when it was little things like that. It's not about the nightclub and the thongs and all that.
No.
Never very
It's
good.
about that look. It's about that look when my wife looks at me with her eyes, and how she looks at me. It's all encompassing, and the things that we don't necessarily like with our, like, I have a weird thing about my earlobes. I think that I look like Buddha. I've always had these long earlobes, or little things about me that even I'm a little self-conscious of. She loves and adores, and it's like if you wrote, when you find your human, and I know you understand this because you've met your human, but when you finally meet your human, it's like you had written an ingredient list to God, and you say, okay, I'm going to make the perfect whatever lasagna. I don't know.
Right.
And I need this, and this is what I want in the person. And they have to have a sense of humor, and they have to be sexy, but they have to not be too worried about being sexy, and they can be silly and smart in a funny, smart, intelligent way, like that. I get. And then you give it to God, and then they deliver this person that is everything that's on your checklist. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be trials and tribulations, and you might get sick one day and have to take care of each other. It's just life. And when you really love that human being, you're honored. You feel honored to do those things, right?
Right. Absolutely. And going back to the Christmas tree set, is that dare to be that child again, and to imagine what it is that you're looking for in your life, and it will manifest, and it will come to fruition. When I was a kid, I remember thinking of a Stephen, and I would be like, where did I hear this name? Like, I didn't have any friends named Stephen. And I imagined that, and I thought, oh, well, it's the guy on Dynasty, the first gay guy, or the first gay kiss. His name was Stephen. I always put it back to that. But no, I believe that there are soulmates, and some of them are meant to be a relationship, and others, to me, a soulmate of mine is Tina Turner. Just her energy and her positivity and her resilience and her path in life to keep going. And, she's a workhorse queen. And I think, there are people like that you just click with, and you immediately know that there's either a past that you had together, or you were meant to be in that moment together. And it could be just somebody in the grocery store. You may not need to have a very long relationship, but you're meant to talk to each other. I drove recently past a woman. I had to pull over and say hello to her. I scared her a little. She's probably 80-some. I wasn't even driving. She's 80-some, I assume, years old. And on my way every morning to my AA meeting, I drive past this woman, and she walks in the rain, in the snow, in the sleet, in the whatever, every day on this kind of busy road. And she's feeble and she stops and she bends over. The one time I thought she got hurt and I was like, are you okay? She's like, fine. I just stretching. And I was like, okay. So the other day I stopped and I said, I just want to say hello. And she's like, I'm so glad you did. I see you every morning. And so I'm meant to know her, even if it was just for that moment, and to be inspired by the fact that at 80, whatever, keep moving. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's all I'm ever supposed to know about her. But like,
But you felt that that compelling. See, that's something that's very key. That when it's something that's pulling you to say something, to do something. I've had the same thing. Back in California, I'm in Australia right now, but back in California, you know, we have a lot of people who are homeless. That's the situation. And I remember going into a gas station convenience store, and standing outside was this woman who had obviously been homeless for quite some time. She wasn't asking anything. She was just standing there. I think she was kind of almost like resting. And as I walked by her, I felt like I knew her, and like an old type, like many
right,
lifetimes ago type thing. And I said, well, this is just odd. And I'm doing my thing, right? I'm trying to get my gas and trying to get on the road again. And as I'm standing there, I get that download and that compelling thing. You must talk to her. You need to connect with her. And so when I was there, I bought a few things, some fruit and some water and some things like that to give to her. And when I came out, I started a conversation with her. And it was as if she was like some master teacher, almost like Yoda, right?
yes,
This brilliant, amazing human being. And that compelling feeling I got, and that download, that voice, whatever your voice, thoughts, something was telling me, get her a hotel room. And I said to the I said, oh, really? And yeah, get her a hotel room.
right,
And I asked her, I said, when was the last time you had a decent night's sleep? And she looked at me and she said, maybe 6 months ago. She doesn't sleep. She has to keep one eye open because
right,
it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous for anyone who's homeless. People, cruel people hurt them. Horrible. But especially being a woman. And
right.
so I just went and I said, come on. I said, do you trust me? And she said, yeah. She got in my car. I went to it was Motel 6. It was right near
Right.
there. And I went to the gentleman. I said, you stay right here. I went inside and I said, I am renting this room for this woman. And I said, I want you to give her a late checkout. And I said, I don't want you to hassle her about anything. Here's my credit card. I will pay for everything. Treat her with respect. And the guy was so moved by it. He said, you got it. She's going to, she'll be treated like a queen. And so when I came back to the car, I gave her the keys and I said, you're going to have a good night's sleep. You can rest, you're safe, you're protected, and you can take a bath and watch TV if you want, whatever you want. And she looked at me like I was an angel. And what it was she said, thank you. And I said, no, thank you. Because what that gave me was so much more, because she was a master teacher in some other lifetime. And it was just repaying her a small little thing. But those things, when we feel compelled to act on them, that is so
Yeah.
important.
So important. Thank you for sharing that story. It's beautiful. And it's an example, it's such a strong example of trusting that instinct. And, we can find that instinct in so many areas of our lives.
Yeah.
To trust it and to not second guess it, not to overthink it, and to believe that that message is from wherever, and we're compelled to do so. And, it's just the kindest thing to do, to not only to do what you did, but to trust that the information is meant to happen. And if it doesn't, we have those times where it doesn't. But, if we can, do so. We're not telling people now your job is to go drive around and find every homeless person in a hotel room, because it's not always the case. I know for me, it doesn't happen so much here in Rochester. There are the homeless people in certain places. But if you go to a big city, as you say, you never know when you're going to walk past somebody. And I do. I literally, as I'm approaching, I kind of almost go into a state of like, what do I decide to do? And sometimes I don't feel compelled to help. And I trust that. You know, you can't put yourself in a position where you're, you know.
No, but you listen
giving
to, if you're listening, if you're really listening to, and again, I can't put my, it's feeble to put a word to it, the universe, God, whatever. But if you're just in tune with that and know that you're guided, and also if it's not reciprocated, she could have said, you know what, no, and she could have started speaking
Right.
Jewish, and but that doesn't, it doesn't matter. It was your intention is the most
Yeah.
important thing, right? So yeah, so I want to encourage everybody. We're both encouraging everybody that's watching this and listening to this. If you're watching on YouTube, you are in for a treat. If you're not, if you're listening to this on a podcast show, find the YouTube video, because I've had tears. I've been moved to tears, and it's just so important to listen to that. And speaking of that, I want to go into, for those who are, you know, this is the show for also entrepreneurs, for people who are either starting their business or who have their own business, who want to grow and become successful. Not, and I'm not just talking financially, you know, that like when I say success, I mean doing what you love, loving what you do, helping others, because some people are more philanthropic. They want to help their communities. They want it. Some people want to write their books. Some people want to be speakers. Can let's talk about some things that people can do, especially when it comes to that self-love, because I find that a lot of the clients that I work with, some of they can be extremely talented and gifted in a particular area, but it's that confidence, but also that self-love, that's what they're needing the coaching on. That's what they're really needing work with. And you've spoken about this so much. Can you give us some golden nuggets to help people out?
You know, I think it's interesting. So much of what I do goes back to children and childhood, and learning from children, and learning from educators and authors for children's books. You know, it's very simple. It's very clear. We are to love ourselves. Now, that sounds conceited. That sounds obnoxious. And some people are uncomfortable with that, for back to the earlobes, for whatever reason, physically, whatever they've been taught in the past. But I remember as a child, my mother said to me, you know, you need to, after you brush your teeth, you need to look into the mirror every morning and look into your beautiful eyes as deep as you can and say, I love you. You don't have to say it out loud, or you can. And I have in my life, in difficult times, I've had to hold myself to the mirror and force myself to look into my eyes, and with tears down my face, not believing it, having to say it, you know, and it changes something in you when you do that, because it is so important to love yourself. And that is the key to keeping the light on within ourselves, and to follow and do what we love. Now, I'll never forget my ex-father-in-law, my ex-wife and I were like, we want to open a business. We're 20 years old. We want to open a business. Okay, well, what do you want to do? But I don't know, whatever makes money. He's like, okay, it's not about that. We were like, well, why would you do it? And he's like, you know, so he was like, what do you love? And we were like, ice cream, to be sarcastic. He's like, great, let's open the best freaking ice cream place ever and turn it into a franchise and put Ben and Jerry's out of business or whatever. And we sat there in silence, because we were like, oh my God, that's so simple. But it's sometimes the hardest thing to do, to love yourself and to do what you love. Because immediately you start to say, what's this person going to say? Oh, I have self-doubt. Oh, that person does it better. And that self-sabotaging brings you back to my life. Well, I'll just do what is the most realistic thing, and you know, I'm going to work in business. And I did. And
I'll do the most responsible thing.
Yeah. And I found that joy, and I made it work. I find joy. I find the joy in things, and I made it work, and I was successful. But but I was dying inside. And it wasn't until my mother was literally dying, and she had some troubles with different aspects. And she was in the hospital with after an accident. And I was holding her hand, and she turned to me and she just said, "What have I done with my life?" And I was like,
Ooh.
and that was all she said that night to me. And she didn't talk to my sisters. And we used to have late night talks, and we hadn't had late night talks in a while because of coming out and stuff. And she said that to me for me to ask myself that question. What am I doing with my life? And I had been working in this career, and I was like, I love to perform, and I'm not performing. And I'm dying inside because I'm trying to perform at a business meeting, which is fine. And it was responsible and it was fun. But I was like, I could be in that bed tomorrow, just like her, dying and saying, what have I done with my life? That's not going to happen. Now, it didn't just change overnight, but that began the process of starting to say, okay, what do you love? And, having the conversation with my husband and having, how do I do this more like a part-time job so that it's still being fulfilled? Because I just wasn't performing at all. And I just felt like a shell. And I filled that shell with alcohol, because I was just like, I wasn't making money when I first performed. I wasn't doing incredible things. I was just getting on the stage, period. And I was lousy, you know what I mean? It was just, but I felt alive again. And that began the process of like, what do I love, doing what I love. But again, ebbs and flows. In that process, you make the comparison with somebody else. Oh, I have to do and look like them. And that's the mistake. And it's so subtle. It's just this subtle line to stay on. But oftentimes the most simple things are the hardest to do, right? You want to lose weight, work out and eat, right? That's it. There are all these other things that people are saying are other ways, but that's the way you do it. So you want to be happy, you got to love yourself and do what you love. That's it.
Yep, that's it.
You can complicate. And certainly, I shouldn't say complicate. There's certainly, everybody learns in different ways. And we find different paths, but it's that simple. And we all know that answer. That little boy or girl, or in my case, little boy, girl, boy, fella, was screaming inside, I want to be on stage. I knew it. As a matter of fact, I went to a psychic early on in my life, and they said, you're going to spend a lot of time with computers, but when you're middle-aged, you're going to be on stage, and you're going to be, and something about wigs. And I was like, wigs? Well, that must be, but there it was again, it was this image that I could see and I could hold to, that, okay, but we're not promised time, so yeah, anyway, my rant.
Oh, no, you can rant anytime you want on the show. I do believe that that's something that's so important, because we get overwhelmed. Well, as we get older too, we have more responsibilities, right? We have a family, we have a if you're lucky enough to have a mortgage, that's great, but you have all these responsibilities. And so what happens is that people tend to rely on those things, those jobs that at least pay the bills. And the idea of stepping out of that comfort zone and doing something that you absolutely love and not knowing if you're going to make money at it. What I always tell people too, I said, because I'm not foolhardy. What I would do is I would have my job. I had my bread and butter, right? I knew that money was coming in, and I loved, the thing was that even with that job, I loved what I was doing. So that means I was really good at what I was doing. And that was job security. But at the same time, there was other things that I wanted to do. And I managed to do a little bit of this on the side while I'm doing this. And then you can feel it. It's when you're living your passion, when you're doing what you're passionate about, opportunities just open. That's how it is. Opportunities open. You'll meet a person who can work with you, who can inspire you in different ways. And it's just, I encourage people to step outside that comfort zone a little bit of, yes, this is secure, to going after what they're really passionate about. It's so
Yeah.
important.
And well, like anything else, if it's a step or a ladder, you can't get to the top, step without, the ones in between. So for me, for performing, I would do it on a part-time basis a couple nights a week. And as time went on and as the opportunity of RuPaul's Drag Race happened, then Mr. Davis, Steve, and I had conversations about what was realistic and what was appropriate to make the changes at the time. So I agree with you. And I also think that, when we say do what you love, it doesn't mean abandon who you love, your families, and ignore those things. But what better way to teach a child in life is that I'm doing what I love and I'm loving who one of the best things my husband ever did was to get divorced and show his children that, I am going to be true to myself and I'm going to be honest with your mother, and it's helped them become the women that they've become in that whole process. So, those tough times, those tough examples of maybe changing a job and having to have multiple jobs and live somewhere else to follow what you love teaches those children more than you could have if you just stayed miserable in the job that paid well.
So true. And especially with relationships, you're teaching your children every day what love is, what a good relationship is. And if you're staying in a relationship because, well, bills are being paid,
Right.
you're also teaching them to put up with, if it's abuse or a lackluster, no love type, and that's what they're going to follow as well. I love
Right.
one thing that you love to talk about is the importance of celebrating each other's uniqueness and difference. And I think this is really key when it comes to anyone who's a coach or who wants to be a coach or a consultant or a speaker, an entrepreneur in general, or even a podcaster. We tend to want to do what others, and in other words, mirror what other people are doing that are successful. But I like the idea of really celebrating our own uniqueness and tapping into things that make us different. Can you talk about that? Because I know that was something that you had to deal with, really early on. But for people who are either maybe starting out in business or trying to get that recognition that they want, the importance of celebrating your own uniqueness. That goes back to self-love, I know, but also being, because it's like a little, that snowflake story, right? It's the same thing. You are so unique with who you are, what you are, and how you present yourself to the world. I just want to get your spin on that a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I think we as we celebrate and we get excited for overnight sensations, and then we try to emulate. Well, that happened quick because we want things fast, and that happened quick for them. So I'm going to be like XYZ. And first of all, you can't. It's never going to be authentic. And in that inauthentic, like if you're not being authentic, you can't answer an email and join a Zoom podcast recording and answer questions honestly if you're trying to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. I couldn't confidently say yes, and I couldn't confidently begin to be here and to answer these questions if I was trying to fit somebody else's mold.
Yes.
Because I'm not telling the truth. And the truth is what people are attracted to. And it doesn't matter if you're over technology or you're face to face, if you're on a stage or if you're in an interview room. If you're not telling the truth, it doesn't sync up. Exactly. And I've been on both sides of that. I've been where I wasn't being myself, and I would say to my direct reports, I can't get through to this person. Well, it's because I'm not being truthful. I'm not being like authentically, myself. And I think that it starts with children because we, again, as parents try, I'm passionate about my story time with children. And in that celebration of story time, I am being Mrs. Kasha Davis, and I don't explain anything to the kids. It's Mrs. Kasha Davis. If they have a question, we answer it. They know that Mrs. Kasha Davis is a fabulous lady who likes to read books and talk about loving yourself. But also in that process, we talk about if you happen to see somebody different in the world, different meaning anything, glasses, drag, whatever.
Disabled, yeah.
You treat them with kindness, because we are brought up to try to make ourselves look good by making fun of these people that happen to stand out and that are different. And because they stand out and are maybe physically different, then you're not willing to be yourself in life because you might get made fun of. So you see what I mean? So it's like the blatant, obvious, different people get made fun of. So if I am struggling with trying to be myself, instead I try to follow the fold, and I rob the world of that beautiful light, because I'm not being honest, and I'm not being me, because I don't want to get made fun of. So if we can start early about celebrating people's uniqueness and celebrating that and being kind, just simply being kind.
Just
You
be
don't
kind.
have,
Yes.
you don't have to bully and make fun of somebody for whatever.
It's so true.
Yeah, and it's going to be an ongoing process in this world, but that's where I believe it starts, is with the kids. And my passion is to, I'm working on it, and we've got pitches out there, but to have the first, drag queen storytime television show on television, where it's the fun and the flamboyant drag of like a Pee-wee's Playhouse, the set and the costumes, but the honesty of a Mr. Rogers. We're going to talk about real stuff.
Yeah.
And these children's books that I have been encountering are a magical, wonderful messages for children of all ages. Truly.
So my intuitive guidance, I have full chills going down my arms and up my neck. So however it comes to fruition, it's going to happen. And I don't know what form it's going to take, but it's definitely going to happen, because you just said that fun, fantasy like feeling of a Pee-wee's Playhouse, and yet the heart and those beautiful lessons from Mr. Rogers, that blending is just a surefire hit. I mean, anybody that's watching this right now, if contact Mrs. Kasha Davis if she hasn't already sold this to, to a major network. But yeah, I can definitely feel that.
And here's the thing. Thank you. A major network, or a small production that builds. A live theater performance is what I've done pre-COVID, and now I'm doing a minor version of it on Facebook Live and Instagram Live and all that kind of stuff. But that television program, for the kids to have that moment, because they live in the magic land. If you say to a child, "What will you be when you grow up?" and they answer a unicorn, they believe it. And you know what? Good for them, because they should. As a child, it's all that is a place that we all, as we get older, we always want to go back to, that mystery and that joy of the color and the possibility. But to be able to sit down and take right from the news, protests for Black Lives Matter are happening, and we're going to sit down, Mrs. Kasha Davis, in a circle with kids and talk about, what does it feel like to hear these things? And how are we feeling? And what can we do? And how can we be kind? Because it not only helps those children to be heard and to listen, but the parents to be able to continue the conversation, right? And so we would, of course, have people helping us with those things. But the idea is that, too often the kids are told, go over there and watch TV, or go play your game, or, your screen time. Let's have that honest conversation, and let's do it together, and then get right back to fun. And I think it's missing, and I think it would be wonderful. I mean, drag is just a marvelous way to, I think, exaggerate so many things and to bring things to light. gender, sexuality, just, your confidence levels and different things. And so it's just spreading like, a virus, but we don't want a vaccine for drag.
No.
It's spreading everywhere. It's everywhere. And people love it because it's that exaggeration. And then it brings you back to, to your real life. And
well, it's this explosion of creativity and energy. And when you're just a part of it, I mean, just my conversation with you has changed me, it's changed me. It's set my mood for the day, obviously, but also my encounter and an interaction with you has forever changed me in some beautiful way. And I think when you do that with adults, it's wonderful, but also with children who really need that, and they need to feel seen and heard. That's, I think, probably the most important thing, but also what's possible. And you present that, you represent that, what's possible,
right.
in a beautiful, fun, loving way. So I wish you all the success in the world with that. And if you ever want to do a podcast or a video YouTube channel, you know who to talk to, because I'm here for you, girl. I'm here.
I appreciate that because, I've been a guest on podcasts and I've thought of podcasts, and, I don't know if the kids are going to necessarily be listening to podcasts. Maybe they do, but I am always open, and I always like.
I'll tell you something. I'm going to tell you a little secret. Let's come over to the microphone over here real quick. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to tell you something. Children's podcasts are in great need and desire right now. There's not many of them. The ones that are not very good, but also YouTube, when you make this available to YouTube to a global audience and they get to see you, then you'll get a lot of subscriptions. Then you'll get the money coming in from the ads, because they're going to go, oh my God, everybody wants to watch this. So you might think about that, then have that as your launch pad, and then the network will come knocking at your door. I'm just saying that's what the hit I'm getting. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I love that moment, because that could be a moment with the kids show. Now we're going to talk quietly over here for a second.
Yeah. Okay.
And because kids love that kind of stuff, well, I loved it.
Come closer. My eyes, I have a little, since I was little, I have one eye that kind of goes to the side. I don't know what it is. I have not a clue what it is, but that's maybe why that's probably why I do the glasses so young. Mrs. Kasha Davis, it has been an absolute treat having you on Out of the Box with Christine. And I want to have you back on anytime you want. Anytime you want. We could talk about so many different things, but I would love to have you back on. And can we please, let's tell our wonderful listeners and viewers how they can reach you, how they can connect with you. What's the best way? Through your website?
I'll tell you, the best thing is if you go on this new technology called the www.
Yes.
Mrs. Kasha Davis. I'm on InstaSnatch, Twitter, Faceplace, and now TikTok. I don't know why we're talking to the clock on the kitchen wall, but we are. So if you just find Mrs. Kasha Davis, I'm the one. So you'll find me on those places. And I'm just so delighted to say that Workhorse Queen, the documentary about my story and my journey, is making its way to film festivals all around the world. So I'm hoping that we'll be there in Australia, but we just had our premiere at Slam Dance in LA, February 12th through the 25th, this Thursday. And so that, but we the marketing people, they don't let me know too much, but it's being scheduled all over for the next year or so. So I'm excited about that.
I want to see it. When can we see it? Where can we see it? We have to wait. We have to wait.
Well, yes, you can go to the Instagram page of Workhorse Queen, and you'll see the announcements of where it will be. We're in talks with streaming platforms and things to that effect. But right now we're on the film festival circuit, which is streaming. So
okay, Netflix, Hulu. What's the other one?
Right?
Amazon.
Exactly.
Come on now, jump on this.
It's going to happen. It's
a no-brainer.
Well, it's a lot of what we're talking about, and it's about not giving up and your community, and following your dream and that keeping that light alive.
I love you, Mrs. Kasha Davis.
Oh, well, I love you too. This has been a joy. I'm so glad that we got to connect.
Me too. Thank you so very much. And folks, if you want to make sure that you get all the links we were talking about, so you can reach out to Mrs. Kasha Davis, we'll include that in the show notes. You can just click on them, and please do check out her Insta-twat, whatever it's called. What is it?
Insta-snatch,
Insta-snatch.
Twatter, and
Water and
Yeah,
face
I mean,
and what
listen.
and faceplate? What face?
face place. It's that place where your face is up.
Yes.
You know, I just use those because they're silly. And Mrs. Kasha Davis is, you know, she's the suburban housewife just trying to keep up with all this technology, because you know what I still do? I still send, Mr. Davis and I still send our daughters a postcard once a week with something nice on it, because you can't forget snail mail. You know, that deserves a shout out.
But
too.
are you able to write? Because I write like I'm 2 now, because
Yeah.
I'm so used to typing and, you know, this.
Well,
I can't write anymore.
They can't read my writing, but they can read his. So mine usually just says la 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 love.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Mrs. Kasha Davis, aka Ed Popel. You'll always be Mrs. Kasha Davis to me, though.
Oh.
And say hello to the hubby for me, all right?
I will. He's just finishing dinner, so here we go. Woo!
Send my love, and stay warm and cozy there in New York. I know it can get really cold in the winter. But thanks so much. And thank you, wonderful listeners and viewers, for tuning in. If you want to make sure you never miss another episode of Out of the Box with Christine, make sure on video you subscribe and hit that bell so you can be notified. And thank you so much. Until next time, as I always say, remember to think outside of that damn box. Bye for now.
Bye.